Hey there. Today I'd like to tell you about the national game of Madagascar. It was incredibly popular, played by kings and commoners alike, and is still popular today. It's a two-player war game, but the way you capture your opponent's pieces is unlike anything I've ever seen. Pull up a chair and I'll tell you about Fanorana, this time on The Game Bench. To play, you'll need a Fanorana board. There are 3 different versions of Fanorana that I'm aware of. The first is Fanorana Telu. That's a 3x3 grid that looks and plays just like Three Men's Morris or Rota. Fanorana Dimi is a 5x5 grid that looks just like Alkirke, although the rules are very different. And finally, Fanorana Sivi is a 5x9 grid, which is essentially 2 Alkirke boards side by side. This is purportedly the most popular version, and it's the version that I'll be discussing here. For simplicity, I'm just going to call it Fanorana. I made this board, and if you want to see how I did it, check out my build video. It got dicey for a second in the middle of the build, so check it out. Link in the description. You'll also need 22 pieces for each player. For my game, I'm using glass marbles. The game starts with all pieces on the board, like this. Note that the centermost space is empty. White goes first. Pieces move along connected lines, 1 space per turn. The goal is to capture the most of your opponent's pieces. Play continues until one player has captured all enemy pieces or leaves their opponent with no legal moves. Now, the capturing method is exciting to me because I've never seen anything like it. There are 2 ways to take enemy pieces, by approach or by withdrawal. Capturing by approach means moving your piece forward until it is adjacent to an enemy piece. That piece is captured along with all pieces lined up behind it in an unbroken line. A gap in the sequence limits the number of captures. Like here, white captures 3 black pieces, but the empty space in the sequence means white doesn't capture all 5. Note that pieces are only captured in the line of attack. Capturing by withdrawal works the same way, only you begin next to an enemy piece and move 1 space away. Again, you capture that piece and all pieces in sequence behind it. If you have the option of approaching and withdrawal, both enemy pieces aren't captured. You choose which you remove from the board. Don't eat both ends like a leech, says a Malagasy proverb. Now here's where it gets a little confusing. Like checkers or drafts, you can immediately make another capture if one is available. You can do this multiple times, changing directions as you go. An 1885 article about the game says that after you've made a capture, quote, any piece that is moved is permitted to run amok in the enemy's line and go on as long as he finds foes to capture. However, you're not allowed to double back to a space you had already occupied in your turn. Any additional captures after the first are optional. Note that these additional plays on your turn have to result in a capture. You can't just move a piece into a favorable position without taking an enemy piece in the process. Traditionally, after the first game, a second is immediately played. That is assuming that it wasn't a draw. But in the second game, now called a vila, the loser starts. This player is called Homa Bela, which roughly translates to a poor sheep not to be molested for a while in his pasture ground. The previous winning player is called Madampzina Bela, the sheep who is allowed to graze at large. There's clearly a mocking condescension in these names, and I am here for it. The not to be molested sheep moves and captures as normal, but only takes 1 piece per capture, regardless of how many pieces are queued up behind the captured piece. The grazing at large sheep is allowed to move, but not capture any pieces. The game continues like this until the previously defeated player has captured 17 of their opponent's pieces, leaving the previous winner with only 5. Then the game continues with all the normal rules back in play. The same 1885 article relates that if the losing player loses again, they can only play the Vila version of the game until they redeem themselves. This comes in the form of a victory or, quote, he may choose to humiliate himself by openly confessing his inferiority. In ancient times, grace was accorded to the beaten combatant on condition of him kneeling down before his conqueror and bleating like a sheep in confession of his weakness. The article goes on to say that, quote, few of the Malagasy are willing to do that. Yeah, you think? Let's start with the name. I'm doing my best to pronounce it Fanorana. I think that's the correct pronunciation, but I'm probably butchering it. Also, I realize now that I use the anglicized version in my build video, which is apparently way off the mark. Apologies to anyone from Madagascar who's watching. It's difficult to determine the actual age of Fanorana. Prior to European contact in 1500 CE, Malagasy culture and history were largely by oral tradition, leaving few written records. The oldest known artifact is apparently a 5x9 board carved into stone at Alasora in the Central Highlands. This has been dated to roughly 15 to 1600 CE. Now, I say apparently because I came across this same reference in nearly every resource I read, but there's no photos or illustrations of the artifact or the carving, and no academic papers I could find. So I suspect this is what's referred to as a floating fact, that is, a reference that is repeated and republished widely without proper due diligence to confirm that it's valid. Most sources I've seen repeat this reference nearly word for word. One of the oldest Fanorana carvings discovered at Alasora, southeast of Antananarivo, dates from between 1500 and 1600. I encounter this a lot in my gaming history, as early game historians seem to be perfectly happy to repeat, without question, what others in the field had already published. So I'd say this board at Alasora is plausible, but not confirmed. The oldest verifiable image I could find is this board, which is apparently the personal board of King Andrea and Pornmirna, dating to roughly the late 18th century. Now, while this royal board is rather humble looking, Fanorana was incredibly important to Malagasy culture. The game was played by commoners and kings alike, and has a reputation for requiring deep strategic thinking, much like chess is thought of in Western cultures. Now, I need to mention that I'm glossing over a lot of nuance in Madagascar history. The people of the island are not a monolith, but my focus isn't the various leaders and kingdoms that rose and fell over time, it's Fanorana, a game that seemed to be widely popular across the entire island. There are several proverbs that mention Fanorana, and I think they help convey its importance to the Malagasy people. Fanorana is not a game for the hasty. This proverb reflects the common view that impulsive actions lead to defeat, both on the board and in real life. The Malagasy people use this as a metaphor for everything from politics to marriage negotiations. He does not know Fanorana and blames the stones. This is my favorite and essentially translates to the Western expression, it is a poor craftsman who blames his tools. And perhaps the most important one, a king who does not know Fanorana does not know how to rule. This directly connects the patience, self-control, and strategy of the game to much weightier topics like war negotiations and running a kingdom. The most famous folktale concerning the game is the story of King Ralambu and his heirs. The king was pondering which of his sons should rule next, and found good and bad in each. The royal astrologer advised the king to feign illness and send messengers to both of his sons, telling them that the king was gravely ill and they must return home immediately. The first to return would inherit the kingdom. The eldest, Prince Andrea Tumpu Quendridra, was engrossed in a game of Fanorana, trying to puzzle his way out of a difficult position. He delayed his departure until he could make his move. Meanwhile, the youngest, Prince Andrea Zaka, returned home at once and became the next king. Most certainly apocryphal, the story demonstrates how serious people took the game. It also led to another important Malagasy proverb. A prince delayed by Fanorana loses the throne. The game was unknown in the West until the 1900s, when British missionaries descended on the island. The first English language record I could find was from an 1885 edition of the Antananarivo Annual and Madagascar magazine, a missionary journal published on the island. The article was written by the Reverend William Montgomery, one such early missionary. He tells the rules and history of the game, as well as sharing the notation of how several games he witnessed were played. The notation for the game is just as complex as chess, in my opinion. Montgomery starts his article this way. Nobody can reside very long in Madagascar, or in the central parts of it at any rate, without occasionally observing little companies of the natives bending eagerly over some mathematical-looking diagram, rudely scratched on roadside stone, or on the top of a rock, or more roughly still, on the sun-baked clay of the wayside. If you look a little at the figure of the diagram and consider the multiplicity of squares, diagonals, and adjacent parallelograms involved in it, you may think the people are discussing some Malagasy rider to one or other of the propositions in the second book of Euclid. Take the trouble to ask, however, and you will find that they are simply playing at their national game, the Fanorana. He goes on to explain how Malagasy gamers are different than other gamers and gamblers of the era. Games of skill or chance, generally speaking, do not attract much interest among the Malagasy. They have never seen dice anywhere among them, and very likely there are not 50 natives in all the island who know anything at all of chess or drafts. He also relates a tale of a past Malagasy king and how Fanorana helped him win a war. In one of Radama's campaigns in the southern parts of the island, a king, whom he was besieging, had perched himself on the summit of his stone-barricaded gateway, and in unblessed ignorance of the dangerous powers of the muskets which Radama had acquired from the English, he was giving only one eye to the approaching enemy and employing the other in a friendly game of Fanorana with one of his officers. The poor fellow never finished his game, for an unlucky bullet put it all out of his head in a moment, in its swift check to the king. Now he concludes his article by pontificating on how Fanorana is ultimately a foolish way to spend your time, ending with these words of wisdom. I have no shrewder words to say of it than those said to me by a clever young native. We cannot call it a good sport, and we cannot call it a bad one, but it may be either good or evil according to the character and circumstances of those who engage in it. While this was the first English publication, the game wasn't known much outside of Madagascar until the 20th century, when it began to appear in surveys of ancient games. Game historian R.C. Bell was one of the first, including it in his 1960 book, Board and Table Games from Many Civilizations. Bell included Fanorana under war games in the Alkirke group. This makes sense, as the Fanorana board is just two Alkirke boards bolted together. Now, Alkirke is believed to have originated in the Middle East, so it's possible that Arab traders visited Madagascar and introduced locals to the game, but I'm not so sure. While the boards certainly look familiar, the capture mechanics are just so different. Malagasy tradition provides a definite answer to the creation of the game in the tale of Prince Andreatrompuku. It is said that as his father grew older, the prince began to contemplate how to better conduct the kingdom when he ascended to the throne. He knew that public gatherings were an important part of statecraft, as the people would gather around the king to sing and dance. One day he was watching some of his children play with beans in the dirt, arranging them in straight and cross lines, sorting them according to color and size. It struck the prince that he ought to have such an arrangement of the different orders of his subjects. After consulting with his wife and then with his wise men, he elaborated his plan, which was that of a large square divided into 16 smaller squares, with the two intersecting diagonals. On the outer side of the large square, he proposed to arrange the Imerian people. The diagonal lines were to be occupied by the commoners. The other inner lines were to be occupied by alternate rows of commoners and nobles. By and by, he discovered that the Imerian people might be aggrieved if they were arranged exclusively on the outside lines and out in the cold, so he devised 4 small additional diagonal lines on which some of the tribe might be arranged, nearer to the king and the center of the gathering. Eventually, this seating chart was doubled in size, and rules for mock fighting between the clans were added. This became the basis for the game Fanorana as we know it today, or so the story goes. If you're not an ancient game nerd like me, it's likely you first encountered Fanorana in Assassin's Creed 3, where it's a playable minigame within the game. So, I'm fascinated by the capture mechanics in Fanorana. First, because I've never seen anything like this approach or withdrawal capture before, and second, because I just can't get my head around what story it was trying to tell. With most war games, I get the story, like replacement capture, like in chess or the royal game of war. You land on the same spot as your opponent, and in occupying that space, you force them off the board. That makes sense. With the short leap, like in checkers or Alquerque, you jump over your opponent's piece to remove it from the board. I get that too. Your soldier has overrun the enemy's position, causing it to be lost. In custodial capture, like in Nefeltoffel or Seja, you flank your opponent on two sides and remove them from the board. Again, the enemy is faced with an overwhelming force. That makes sense. But the idea of approaching your enemy and stopping a space away, or retreating from them, both of which result in not only a single capture, but all the pieces lined up behind that captured piece, it just didn't make sense. Now, I found one source that referred to approach and withdrawal as capture by percussion and capture by suction, but that didn't feel any better. Finally, I stumbled upon a short article by Damian Gareth Walker. He writes, "Before Assassin's Creed, Fanorana had been a popular choice for game books because of the unusual method of capturing pieces. Instead of jumping on or over a piece, captures can be made by approaching a column of pieces, ramming them like a kind of demolition derby so that the piece hit and those beyond are removed from the board. Captures can also be made by withdrawing from enemy pieces, as if pulling them over in a tug of war." And finally, that made sense to me. I don't know if Walker gleaned this idea from a historical source or just made it up himself. Either way, now I get the story that the game is trying to tell. The most advantageous spaces on the board are along the center line, where a piece has 8 possible routes compared to only 4 or even 3 in other spaces. Controlling these spaces gives you more opportunities to attack and more routes to escape an attack. Avoid clustering your pieces, which can cause bottlenecks or worse, force you into making moves that help one piece at the expense of another. Keeping your pieces spread out gives you more options to attack and retreat when necessary. While you can make multi-move captures on a turn, it's not always beneficial to make all the captures you can. If such a move leaves your piece exposed or vulnerable to your opponent's attack, it's best to capture a smaller number of pieces and leave your attacking piece in a protected position. Since the capturing mechanics of Fanorana are so unusual, it's easy to forget that you can make captures by moving away from your opponent. This non-intuitive move not only captures pieces as easily as approach captures, it can often leave your piece in a more protected position as well. And that is Fanorana. I've only played this game a few times and it kind of breaks my brain with these weird capturing rules, but it is a lot of fun and deeply strategic for such a small board with undifferentiated pieces. You should give it a try. Again, I made this board, and if you want to see how I did it, check out my build video. Link in the description and in the end card. As always, I put all the sources I consulted in the description if you want to take a deeper dive on your own. And also, here's the obligatory like, subscribe, comment, tell your friends. You get it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time here at The Gaming Bench. Hey, if you're still watching, I'd like to ask a favor. YouTube has a new feature called Hype. It's only available on the mobile app, so if you're on the app right now, you can tap the 3 dots below this video and get a pop-up screen that includes the Hype button. This is supposed to help small creators like me get more attention for our channels. I guess it gooses the algorithm in some way so that more people see my videos. You can use up to 3 hypes every week, and you can use them all on one video or one channel or spread them across different creators. You can only hype videos that have been uploaded in the past 7 days. Hypes refresh every Monday morning, and you get 3 more. Doesn't cost you anything except a moment of your time, and I really appreciate the support. Thanks.